They thought losing you was nothing, until silence started speaking louder than your presence ever did. There comes a moment in life when someone walks away from you, or worse, treats you as if your value was never real. And in that moment, most people react emotionally. They beg. They explain. They try to prove their worth to someone who already decided to overlook it. But Stoicism teaches something different. It teaches power in restraint, dignity in silence, and strength in self-mastery. If you truly want people to regret losing you, you don't chase them. You transform yourself. You become someone they can no longer access. The first thing you must understand is this. Regret is not something you force into people. It's something they arrive at, on their own, when reality begins to contrast what they lost. And that only happens when you rise. Not loudly. Not desperately. But silently, and completely. Stop explaining yourself. One of the biggest mistakes people make is over-explaining. You feel misunderstood, so you try harder. You talk more. You try to fix the narrative. But Stoicism reminds us, those who misunderstand you intentionally will never understand you through explanation. Your silence becomes your power. When you stop trying to convince people of your worth, you create space for them to feel your absence. And absence is where realization begins. Focus on your growth. Instead of asking, "Why did they leave?" ask yourself, "Who am I becoming now?" Shift your energy. Go to the gym. Build your body. Read books. Strengthen your mind. Work on your purpose. Elevate your life. Because nothing creates regret faster than witnessing someone you underestimated evolve into someone you can no longer reach. And here's the truth most people ignore. People rarely regret losing someone who stays the same. They regret losing someone who becomes better, without them. Detach emotionally. This is not about pretending you don't care. Stoicism is not emotional suppression, it's emotional discipline. You feel the pain. You acknowledge it. But you don't let it control your actions. You don't send that message. You don't check their profile every hour. You don't let your peace depend on their attention. Detachment is where your power returns. Because the moment you no longer need someone is the moment you become unforgettable. Upgrade your standards. Sometimes, people don't value you because you made it too easy for them not to. You tolerated disrespect. You accepted less than you deserved. Stoicism teaches us that we must take responsibility, not for how others act, but for what we allow. So raise your standards. Become someone who walks away the moment respect disappears. Because when people realize they can no longer access you the same way, they begin to question their own actions. And that's where regret starts to grow. Let your life speak. You don't need to show off. You don't need to prove anything publicly. But you do need to build something real. Peace. Discipline. Confidence. A life that doesn't revolve around anyone's validation. Because when someone sees you happy, stable, and thriving without them, it forces them to confront a painful truth. They didn't lose just anyone. They lost someone rare. And now, they can't get that back. Protect your energy. Not everyone deserves access to you. Not everyone deserves your time, your attention, your emotions. Stoicism reminds us that our inner world must be guarded. So be selective. Be intentional. And most importantly, be unavailable to those who once took you for granted. Because access is a privilege, not a right. And when that privilege is removed, its value becomes clear. Never seek revenge. Revenge is loud. Growth is silent. And silent growth is what haunts people the most. When you don't react, when you don't retaliate, when you simply move forward and elevate, you create a kind of mystery. A kind of strength that people can't easily process. They expect anger. They expect drama. But what they get is distance. And that distance becomes their lesson. Because now they're left alone with their thoughts. And those thoughts will remind them of you. Every time. Become unforgettable. Not by clinging. Not by forcing your presence. But by becoming someone whose absence is deeply felt. someone whose energy cannot be replaced. Because at the end of the day, Stoicism isn't about making others regret losing you. It's about becoming so grounded, so strong, so self-sufficient, that whether they regret it or not, no longer matters to you. And ironically, that's exactly when they do. Understand the power of absence. Most people are too available, too present, too easy to reach. And because of that, they become easy to overlook. When you're always there, responding instantly, forgiving endlessly, tolerating repeatedly, you unintentionally teach people that losing you has no consequence. Stoicism teaches restraint. It teaches you to step back, not out of pride, but out of self-respect. When you remove your constant presence, something shifts. They notice the silence. They notice the space. They notice what's no longer there. And in that quiet gap, your value begins to echo. Rebuild your identity. Sometimes, when people lose someone, it's not just about the person, it's about the version of you they became used to. The version that tolerated them. The version that adjusted for them. The version that revolved around them. But now, that version no longer exists. You are rebuilding. And this time, you are not shaping yourself around anyone else's expectations. You are becoming aligned with your own values, your own purpose, your own standards. And when they see that you are no longer the same person they once knew, they begin to realize they didn't just lose you. They lost access to a version of you that will never exist again. Stop seeking closure from them. Closure is something many people chase endlessly. You want answers. You want explanations. You want clarity. But Stoicism teaches a hard truth. Closure does not come from others. It comes from acceptance. You accept what happened. You accept what you cannot control. And most importantly, you accept that some people will never fully explain their actions in a way that satisfies you. And that's okay. Because your peace does not depend on their explanation. It depends on your ability to move forward without it. When you stop chasing closure, you start creating your own. And that quiet acceptance becomes your strength. Master your reactions. You cannot control how people treat you. But you can control how you respond. And your response determines your power. React emotionally, and you give them control. React with calmness, and you take it back. Stoicism is not about being cold, it's about being composed. You don't lash out. You don't argue endlessly. You don't try to win every conversation. You choose your peace over proving your point. And when people expect you to react, but you don't, it unsettles them. Because they no longer understand you. And what people don't understand, they begin to think about. Constantly. Turn pain into discipline. Pain is inevitable. But what you do with it is your choice. You can let it break you. Or you can let it build you. Stoicism teaches us to transform pain into strength. Every disappointment becomes fuel. Every heartbreak becomes a lesson. Every loss becomes a redirection. Instead of sitting in your pain, you move with it. You train harder. You think deeper. You grow stronger. And over time, that same pain that once weakened you becomes the foundation of your transformation. And when they see the result of that transformation, regret becomes unavoidable. Stop reminding people of your value. If you have to constantly remind someone how valuable you are, they are not the right audience for your presence. Value is not something you announce. It's something people experience. And if they failed to see it while they had access to you, your job is not to convince them. Your job is to walk away and let them feel the difference. Because absence reveals what presence could not. And when they compare what they have now to what they lost, that's when realization begins. Control your narrative. People will talk. People will assume. People will create their own versions of what happened. Let them. Stoicism teaches indifference to opinions you cannot control. You don't chase rumors. You don't defend yourself to everyone. You don't waste energy correcting every misunderstanding. Instead, you live in a way that speaks louder than words ever could. Your consistency. your discipline, your peace. These things become your true narrative. And over time, truth reveals itself without you forcing it. Be patient with your evolution. Transformation does not happen overnight. There will be days when you feel strong, and days when you feel like reaching out, days when you feel completely over it, and days when memories hit unexpectedly. This is part of the process. Stoicism teaches patience, not just with life, but with yourself. You don't rush healing. You don't force detachment. You allow yourself to grow, steadily. Because real change is not loud. It's consistent. And over time, that consistency creates a version of you that no longer seeks validation from anyone who once overlooked you. Let them remember you. There's something powerful about being remembered, without trying to be. When you leave with dignity. When you move on without chaos. When you grow without announcing it. You create a lasting impression. Not because you forced it, but because it was real. And people don't forget what felt real. They might ignore it in the moment. They might take it for granted. But later, in quiet moments, in comparisons, in reflection, they remember. And sometimes, that memory becomes heavier than your presence ever was. Because now, it's gone. Completely. Choose yourself, every time. At the core of Stoicism is one simple principle. You must take responsibility for your own life. Your happiness. Your peace. Your growth. And that means choosing yourself, even when it's difficult. Even when it hurts. Even when part of you wants to go back. Because choosing yourself is not selfish. It's necessary. And when you consistently choose yourself, you become someone who cannot be easily replaced. Because most people abandon themselves for others. But you didn't. And that difference is everything. Except that not everyone is meant to stay. One of the hardest truths to embrace is this. Some people are not losses. They are lessons. You hold on, not because they were right for you, but because you became attached to the idea of them. The memories. The routines. The familiarity. But Stoicism teaches acceptance of reality as it is, not as we wish it to be. When someone leaves, or shows you through their actions that they do not value you, that is information. Clear information. And once you accept it, you stop resisting what has already happened. You stop asking, why me? And you start saying, this is what is. That shift is powerful. Because acceptance removes emotional chaos. And clarity replaces confusion. Develop inner independence. If your happiness depends on someone else, you will always feel unstable. Always reactive. Always at risk of losing yourself. But when you build inner independence, everything changes. You enjoy people, but you don't need them to feel complete. You connect, but you don't cling. You care, but you don't collapse when things end. Stoicism emphasizes self-sufficiency. Not isolation, but strength within. And when you become emotionally independent, you stop fearing loss. And when you stop fearing loss, you become someone people fear losing. That's the paradox. Control your attention. Where your attention goes, your energy follows. If you constantly think about them, check their updates, replay conversations, you keep yourself emotionally attached. You keep the wound open. Stoicism teaches discipline of the mind. You redirect your thoughts. Not by force, but by intention. When your mind drifts back to them, you bring it back to yourself. Your goals. Your growth. Your purpose. This is not easy. But it is necessary. Because the more you invest your attention in your own life, the less control the past has over you. And eventually, your focus shifts completely. Live a life that outgrows them. Nothing creates deeper regret than watching someone outgrow the version of life you once shared. When you elevate your habits, your mindset, your environment, you create distance. Not just physically, but mentally and emotionally. You are no longer operating on the same level. And this is not about proving anything. It's about evolving. Because growth is the most natural form of separation. And when someone realizes they can no longer relate to you, access you, or fit into your life the way they once did, it forces reflection. And reflection often leads to regret. Stop romanticizing the past. The past can be deceptive. Your mind highlights the good moments and softens the bad ones. You remember the laughter, but you forget the disrespect. You remember the connection, but you ignore the inconsistency. Stoicism teaches objectivity. See things as they were, not as you wish they were. Remind yourself of the full picture, not just the parts that make you miss them. Because clarity protects you from returning to what once hurt you. And when you stop romanticizing the past, you free yourself from its grip. Become disciplined in silence. There is strength in not revealing everything. You don't need to announce your next move. You don't need to update people on your progress. You don't need to show every improvement. Move in silence. Let your results speak. Because when people don't see your journey, but suddenly notice your transformation, it creates impact. It creates curiosity. And sometimes, it creates regret. Because they realize something changed. Something significant. And they were not part of it. Understand the value of self-respect. Self-respect is the foundation of everything. Without it, you tolerate anything. With it, you walk away from what diminishes you. Stoicism teaches that your dignity is not negotiable. No matter how much you care. No matter how attached you feel. No matter how difficult it is. If something costs you your self-respect, it is too expensive. And when you choose dignity over attachment, you send a message. Not just to others, but to yourself. That message is simple. I will not stay where I am not valued. And that standard changes everything. Let them face the consequences of losing you. Many people never reflect on their actions because they never experience consequences. You stayed. You forgave. You returned. Again and again. So they never had to confront what it meant to lose you. But now, things are different. Now, there is distance. Now, there is silence. Now, there is absence. And in that absence, they are left with themselves. Their choices. Their decisions. Their actions. And for the first time, they may begin to feel it. Not because you forced it, but because you allowed reality to take its course. And reality is the greatest teacher. Strengthen your emotional control daily. This is not a one-time decision. It is a daily practice. Some days will test you. You may feel the urge to reach out, to check in, to reconnect. But discipline is built in those moments. Every time you choose not to act impulsively, you become stronger. Every time you choose your peace over temporary emotion, you gain control. And over time, those small decisions compound. They turn into habits. They turn into character. They turn into strength. And that strength becomes visible. Not just to others, but to you. And when you see your own growth, you no longer need validation from anyone else. Become rare. In a world where people are inconsistent, be consistent. In a world where people are reactive, be composed. In a world where people seek attention, seek purpose. Rarity is not about perfection. It's about alignment. Living in a way that most people don't have the discipline to maintain. And when you become rare, your absence becomes noticeable. Your presence becomes valuable. And losing you becomes a mistake that cannot be easily replaced. Redefine what winning means. Winning is not getting them back. Winning is not making them jealous. Winning is not proving them wrong. Winning is becoming someone who no longer needs any of that. Someone who is fulfilled, grounded, at peace. Because Stoicism teaches that true success is internal. It's not based on external reactions. It's based on inner stability. And when you reach that point, whether they regret losing you or not, stops mattering. Completely. And that is the ultimate power. Let go of the need to be understood. One of the deepest frustrations you will face is being misunderstood. You know your intentions. You know your effort. You know what you gave. But they didn't see it. Or worse, they saw it and still didn't value it. And so, a part of you wants to explain. To defend yourself. To make them finally understand who you really are. But Stoicism teaches something liberating. You do not need to be understood by everyone. You only need to be aligned with yourself. Because the truth is, people see you through the lens of their own mindset, their own limitations, their own experiences. And no amount of explanation can change that if they are not willing to see clearly. So instead of exhausting yourself trying to be understood, you focus on understanding yourself. And that clarity becomes your peace. Refuse to chase validation. Validation is addictive. When someone withdraws their attention, their approval, their affection, you feel the urge to earn it back. To prove yourself again. To regain your position in their life. But this is where most people lose their power. Stoicism teaches self-validation. You know your worth, without needing it to be confirmed. You know what you bring, without needing applause. And when you stop chasing validation, you stop chasing people who withhold it. Because you realize something important. Anyone who makes you feel like you must earn basic respect is not someone you should be trying to impress. And that realization changes your direction completely. Become comfortable with being alone. Loneliness is something many people fear. So they stay in situations that drain them. They tolerate disrespect. They accept less. All because they don't want to be alone. But Stoicism teaches solitude as strength. Being alone is not a weakness. It is an opportunity. An opportunity to reconnect with yourself. To think clearly. To grow without distraction. To rebuild your identity without influence. And when you become comfortable being alone, you become dangerous in the best way. Because now you are not driven by fear. You are driven by choice. And when you choose people, instead of needing them, your standards naturally rise. And your presence becomes more valuable. Detach from outcomes. You want them to regret losing you. That's natural. But the moment you become attached to that outcome, you lose focus. Because now your actions are still tied to them. Stoicism teaches detachment from outcomes. You focus on what you can control. Your growth. Your mindset. Your actions. And you let go of everything else. Whether they regret it or not, is not your concern. Whether they come back or not, is not your concern. Because your life is moving forward, regardless. And ironically, when you stop caring about the outcome, that's when things begin to shift. Not because you forced it, but because you freed yourself from it. Strengthen your boundaries. Boundaries are not about pushing people away. They are about defining what you accept, what you tolerate, and what you walk away from. Without boundaries, people test limits. They take more. They give less. And over time, your value diminishes in their eyes. But when you set clear boundaries, and more importantly, when you enforce them, everything changes. People either rise to meet your standards, or they remove themselves. Either way, you win. Because your peace is protected, and your value is preserved. Stop reacting to breadcrumbs. Sometimes people don't fully leave. They give you just enough attention to keep you attached. A message here. A like there. A small gesture that pulls you back in. And if you're not careful, you respond. You engage. You reopen the door. Stoicism teaches awareness. You recognize these patterns. You see them for what they are. And you choose not to react. Because you understand something powerful. Partial attention is not respect. Inconsistency is not care. And breadcrumbs are not a meal. So you stop accepting less. And when you stop responding to minimal effort, you force people to either step up or step away completely. Both outcomes serve you. Build a life that excites you. When your life is empty, you focus on people. When your life is full, you focus on purpose. Stoicism encourages meaningful living. You create routines. You pursue goals. You build something that gives your life direction. Because when you are genuinely engaged in your own growth, you don't have time to dwell on who left. Your energy is invested elsewhere. And over time, your life becomes so fulfilling that looking back no longer feels necessary. And when people see that you are not just moving on, but actually thriving, it creates a realization. You didn't just survive without them. You became better. Embrace emotional maturity. Maturity is not about age. It's about control. Control over your emotions, your reactions, your decisions. Stoicism teaches emotional discipline. You don't let temporary feelings lead to permanent mistakes. You don't act out of anger. You don't speak out of impulse. You pause. You reflect. You choose your response carefully. And this level of control is rare. And when people encounter it, they notice. Especially if they remember a version of you that was different. Because now, you are not the same person. And that difference is undeniable. Except that closure may never come from them. Sometimes, there is no final conversation. No apology. No explanation. No moment where everything makes sense. And that can be difficult. But Stoicism reminds you. You do not need a perfect ending to move forward. You create your own closure through your actions. Through your growth. Through your decision to let go. And when you stop waiting for something that may never happen, you regain control of your life. Completely. Become the person you needed. Think about what you wanted from them. Support. Respect. Understanding. Consistency. Now ask yourself, can you give that to yourself? Because when you become the person you once needed, you stop depending on others to fill that role. You become whole. Complete. Grounded. And from that place, you attract better. Not because you're searching, but because you've elevated. And when someone who once lost you sees that version of you, they don't just feel regret. They feel the weight of what they failed to recognize. Stay consistent, even when no one is watching. Real growth happens in private. In the moments where no one is there to applaud you. No one is there to notice your effort. No one is there to validate your progress. Stoicism teaches discipline without audience. You show up anyway. You improve anyway. You stay committed anyway. Because you understand that the results will speak, eventually. And when they do, they will reflect a version of you that was built, not for attention, but for excellence. And that kind of growth is impossible to ignore. Stop reopening closed doors. One of the biggest reasons people never feel the full weight of losing you is because you keep returning. You revisit conversations. You respond when they reappear. You allow access, again and again. And every time you do that, you reset the consequence. You teach them that no matter what happens, you will still be there. Stoicism teaches finality. When something ends, let it end. Not with anger. Not with bitterness. But with clarity. Because every time you go back to what you already walked away from, you move further away from who you are becoming, and closer to what once broke you. Let the door stay closed. That's where your power is. Respect your own decisions. It's easy to walk away in a moment of strength. But the real challenge comes later. When emotions return. When memories surface. When doubt begins to whisper. Maybe it wasn't that bad. Maybe you should try again. This is where discipline matters. Stoicism teaches consistency between thought and action. If you made a decision based on clarity, respect it. Don't let temporary emotions override long-term wisdom. Because every time you go against your own decision, you weaken your trust in yourself. But every time you stand by it, you strengthen your identity. And that self-trust becomes unshakable. Avoid the illusion of replacement. Sometimes you see them move on quickly. New people. New connections. New energy. And it can make you feel replaceable. But here's the truth. People can replace your position, but they cannot replace your essence. What you brought, your energy, your presence, your uniqueness. That is not something that can be duplicated. Stoicism reminds you not to compare. Not to measure your worth based on someone else's choices. Because their actions reflect them, not you. And over time, reality reveals the difference between temporary distractions and genuine connection. Be the one who improved after the ending. There are two types of people after a separation: those who break down, and those who build up. Stoicism pushes you toward growth. You don't deny the pain, but you don't live in it either. You use it. You channel it. You become better because of it. And when someone looks back and sees that you didn't fall apart, but instead became stronger, it changes their perception completely. Because now, you are not the same person they left. You are someone they can no longer predict. And that unpredictability creates curiosity. Curiosity leads to reflection. And reflection often leads to regret. Let your standards intimidate the wrong people. Not everyone will rise to meet your standards. Some will feel uncomfortable. Some will feel challenged. Some will walk away. Let them. Stoicism teaches that not everyone is meant to align with you. Your standards are not there to please others. They are there to protect you. And the right people will respect them. The wrong people will resist them. And that resistance is clarity. Because it shows you exactly who belongs in your life. And who doesn't. Become calm in situations that once triggered you. Growth is visible in your reactions. What once made you emotional, now barely moves you. What once caused you to chase, now causes you to step back. What once made you anxious, now feels irrelevant. This is progress. Stoicism is about mastering your internal world, so that external situations no longer control you. And when someone sees that they no longer have the same emotional effect on you, it shifts the dynamic. Because now, they are no longer in control of your feelings. You are. And that shift is powerful. Don't let nostalgia weaken your discipline. Nostalgia can be dangerous. It paints the past in soft colors. It makes you forget the reasons you walked away. It makes you question your decision. But discipline requires memory, not just emotion. Remember the full experience. The inconsistency. The disrespect. The misalignment. Not to hold on to anger, but to maintain clarity. Because clarity protects you from repeating cycles. And cycles are what keep people stuck. Choose long-term peace over short-term comfort. It's easy to go back. It's familiar. It's comfortable. Even if it wasn't right. But long-term peace requires short-term discomfort. Walking away. Letting go. Sitting with the silence. Stoicism teaches endurance. You endure the discomfort now, so you don't suffer repeatedly later. Because temporary comfort often leads to long-term pain. But temporary discomfort leads to growth, to freedom, to peace. And once you experience that peace, you will never want to trade it for temporary attachment again. Recognize your own progress. Take a moment to see how far you've come. You didn't react the same way. You didn't chase the same way. You didn't lose yourself the same way. That matters. Growth is not always loud. Sometimes it's quiet decisions, small changes, subtle shifts. But those small shifts create massive transformation over time. And when you recognize your progress, you build confidence. Not from others, but from yourself. And that confidence is unshakable. Become someone who moves forward without looking back. There is strength in moving on, completely. Not checking. Not wondering. Not waiting. Just living. Fully. Presently. With intention. Stoicism teaches presence. The past is gone. The future is uncertain. But the present is yours. And when you fully step into your present life, you stop being emotionally tied to what's behind you. And when someone realizes that you are no longer looking back, they understand something deeply. You are truly gone. And sometimes, that realization hits harder than anything else. This is where regret becomes real. Not when you argue. Not when you try to prove your worth. But when you move on so completely that they can no longer reach you in any way. Mentally, emotionally, or physically. And by the time they fully understand your value, you are already somewhere they cannot access. If this message is helping you elevate your mindset and take control of your life, follow this channel for more content that builds strength, discipline, and unshakable confidence.